This is a production of PBS Charlotte.
The following episode of Charlotte Cooks is brought to you by Central Piedmont Community College and viewers like you. Thank you.
Coming up on Charlotte Cooks, we're making something absolutely fabulous with this piece of fish. Hi there, and welcome to this edition of Charlotte Cooks. Today on my set, I've got Bruce Moffett with me, and we are cooking something up from your fabulous cookbook, right?
Absolutely. We're going to do a Blackened Mahi with crab cake, a summer Gazpacho, and we're going to finish that off with a little bit of Avocado Salsa.
That sounds absolutely delicious.
Yeah.
That sounds fresh and really wonderful. So what are we going to do first?
First, I guess we're going to make the crab cakes. The reason I do that is the panko breadcrumbs take a little time to hydrate. And so if you make that the last thing and you try to cook it, your whole crab cake will fall apart in your pan. So ideally, you can actually do that the day before. And you can make your panko breadcrumbs, put it in the refrigerator, and it'll set up overnight, and you'll have a nice hard crab cake. And you'll notice in this recipe too, there's a little more breadcrumb than in most recipes, and that's because we're going to use the crab cake as a vehicle to hold up the fish. So it needs to be a little sturdier. You know, a lot of times people will talk about how it just fell apart. There was barely anything holding together the crab, but we need something that's going to hold up to the gazpacho and something that's going to hold up to having a 6-ounce piece of fish on.
Why don't we make some crab cakes?
Sure.
What kind of crab do you use?
Right now we're using a jumbo lump from North Carolina, and you'll see you get the big chunks of the crab. And one thing I really like about this is cleaning it is a lot easier.
Yeah.
Traditionally, what we do when we get the crab in is we'll go through each individual piece and make sure that there's no shells in it. And so when you have the jumbo lump, there's just a lot less shells. It's a lot meatier. You get a bigger piece of crab. You can hold it more together.
Yeah,
so that's why we use the jumbo lump.
Beautiful pieces of crab.
Yeah,
now,
it's a little more expensive, but I think it's totally worth it.
It's a lot more expensive.
Okay.
But this is also something else you can get. Now this is the jumbo lump, and this is something that's called special. It's just a little bit less expensive, and you can see that the meat in here, it's more broken up than the jumbo lump. If you look at the jumbo lump, you see they're nice big juicy pieces. They're absolutely delicious, and this is just broken up a little bit more. Now the problem with this is that it takes a lot more to get all your cartilage and all the other different pieces that are in there in order for it to really be what we call shell-free. And I could see a little piece right there on top, can't you?
My trick with that is when I do it, I usually dump it out first, and then I have a little bowl of water next to me. So as I pick through it, if I come with a shell, I just stick my finger in the bowl of water, the shell falls off my finger, and then I can go back.
You
So
know,
it's just
another
neater,
easy
cleaner,
way,
easier.
really fast way of doing that? Spreading this out on a sheet pan and popping it in the
Yeah,
oven
and then you can
for
see
like
it.
2 or 3 minutes, and all the shells will turn either bright white or red, and you could pick those out really quick too. But we're not going to do that today. So how do you make a crab cake? That's what I want to know.
So what I'm doing here is I'm dicing some celery. And for this, I want to have a pretty small, fine cut so that they don't overwhelm the crab cake. So I'm going to do kind of what we call a brunoise, which is what, 1/8 by 1/8?
Yep, very tiny.
Or you can go 1/4 by 1/4. I guess this is more 1/4 by 1/4. So I just kind of work my way around the celery. And then when
why do you add celery? Is it for a little bit of extra crunch?
Yeah, a little crunch, a little flavor. I like the celery flavor in it as well.
A lot of people will put chopped, diced celery in chicken salads or tuna salads or anything like that. And it's done for not only crunch, but also for the flavor, because it adds another dimension of flavor to whatever it is you're cooking.
Yeah.
And I bet you, did you know that celery is very, very high in natural sodium? In fact, when you dry celery out and you make a powder out of it, it can be used as a preserving salt, like to make bacon and stuff. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And, you know, so people who have to watch their sodium shouldn't be eating a lot of celery, but it's nice to know that it's got one of those unusual little quirky things to it, but it's also loaded with water, isn't it?
And basically what I'm doing too when I do this is I'm going to cut some celery, some red pepper, and some red onion, and I want all my dice to be relatively the same size so things cook evenly, so you don't get like a big chunk of onion and then a small chunk of celery. It would kind of throw the flavors off. So I've taken half a red pepper and I sliced it off. I like to slice it kind of off the pepper, kind of around in a square, and then I cut out any of the ribs. It just makes it a lot easier to work with. And then
It makes it prettier too once it's cut.
And the key to peppers, slicing peppers finally, is a sharp knife. You know, a lot of people are intimidated by sharp knives, but the fact of the matter is when you have a sharp knife, it cuts easier. You're using a lot less pressure when you work, and so you have a lot more control over your knife. So I'm going to go through and dice all this in roughly the same size as the celery. And then also I have a red jalapeno.
Could you use a green jalapeno?
Absolutely.
Okay, just no matter what you have, right?
Yep, and that'll just give it a little bit of kick. And this is important to keep the dice as small as possible, just because you don't want to get a big chunk of jalapeno when you bite into your crab cake, because you'll go from 0 to 60 quickly.
Really fast.
Yeah.
And you know, really, it's just there to add another dimension of interest
Absolutely.
too. It's not there to be, this is a jalapeno popper with crab in it. This is just a little accent to a little flavor.
One of the things too is next I'll do an onion. And one of the things I do when I really want to make sure that I have even uniform cuts that are small, because of the way onions, you can see all the layers are kind of different sizes.
Yeah.
So one thing I like to do when I'm cutting onions and I really, really care about the dice, I'll just take off the layers, put them down.
Slicing onions and dicing onions, you're going to find, if you put 5 chefs in a line and say slice and dice an onion, you may find 2 or 3 of them doing them the same, but you're always going to see a different method, different technique. Doesn't mean one's right, one's wrong. The end result is what you're looking for.
Yeah, I definitely do a different method when I'm just dicing an onion for, you know, something that I'm going to saute or But when I want to really work on getting nice, even, small dice, I like to peel it apart, just because a lot of times the different layers are just different sizes.
They are different sizes.
The next thing I'll do is I'm going to add 2 eggs.
Now, when you are making this batch of crab cakes, how much crab you're using and to 2 eggs?
I use 1 pound per 2 eggs.
Okay.
And the eggs kind of act as a binder, because when they cook, they'll set up.
It helps hold them together again, yes.
Yeah, I like the tang of whole grain mustard, so we add a little bit of that in. And then some mayonnaise, which is one of my favorite things. And then a little bit of lemon juice, about a teaspoon. And then I'm going to add a dash of Texas Pete, because it's from North Carolina.
There you go.
Okay, now I'm going to mix all my wet ingredients together with the veggies. And I'm going to, you know, just to get the egg incorporated and get a nice loose mixture. So I think everything is evenly incorporated at this point. And then I'm going to add my crab.
Now, when you add your crab, are you going to break that crab up, or do you want to actually show off that you've got the lumps?
I'm going to do a little bit of both. I think, you know, it's nice to have crab evenly dispersed through the crab cake, and it's also nice to have some big chunks. You know, one of the litmus tests I always use is, like, if I was sitting down eating this, how would I want to eat it? The thought process begins there, and it's kind of, so if I have crab incorporated through the whole thing, and then some big lumps as well, that kind of make me feel like
you got something.
That I got something.
Right.
I think that's kind of the best. And then some of this will also break down as you kind of mix it as well.
Sure.
Okay, at this point I'll go ahead and add my breadcrumbs in. And you can see it's panko breadcrumbs. They're really dry and kind of crumbly. And so when you add them initially, you know, they haven't taken in all the liquid yet. And so they're still, so you can see the crab cakes are still kind of like grainy and dry. And so if I were, you know, to try and form it immediately, they just kind of break apart. So that's why I recommend either doing it an hour or so ahead of time or do it the day before. As you move along, don't forget to taste.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Taste it so that way you know, do you need to add salt? Do you need to add pepper? Do you need to add a little more lemon? Do you need to add Tabasco? What do you need?
Just needs a little bit more salt.
So Bruce, how would you shape that now?
So now I have it evenly incorporated. I have a small ice cream scoop. And usually what I'll do is I'll put it in the ice cream scoop, and I'll Scoop it out so you have a nice round ball. Then what I do is top finger, bottom finger, and then I make a little circle with the width that I want it and just kind of
circle it around.
Circle it around.
And so now we've got to move on to the gazpacho. Let me
Next
grab
up?
this. And
Yes.
so gazpacho, we have going on for gazpacho all of these lovely vegetables.
For this, I'm going to stick everything in a blender. So
Okay.
basically, I don't really have to worry about my knife cuts
Right.
on this one. So I'm just going to quickly peel the cucumbers.
And these cucumbers are English cucumbers where they don't have the large seeds in them. And certainly if you go and you get cucumbers out of your garden or at the grocery store that have the large seeds in them, you're going to want to peel those seeds out.
Now I'm going to do some peppers.
Okay. Now, do you have to use colored peppers, or can you just use all green peppers? Or?
Once again, I like to use red peppers because I'm going for a red gazpacho.
Okay.
I think if you were going for, like, you could do a yellow gazpacho maybe and use yellow peppers
Okay.
and yellow tomatoes. That might be interesting, and having the neutral cucumber would keep that color. Well, but I like to use either red or yellow. Most of the stuff I'll use will be kind of in that color spectrum just to keep the, I want like a nice rich red color when I do it.
And sometimes our tomatoes, especially if you try to make gazpacho and it's not really what we call tomato season, our tomatoes will not be exactly as ripe as we need them to be.
Correct.
And so having the red peppers in there enhances that red color as well.
So I got the peppers. I got red onion. I just cut the end off, slice through that.
Smells so fresh in here.
And then I'm gonna add my garlic,
Okay.
my tomatoes.
Now, how many tomatoes would you use in this batch? Would you use about half?
6 tomatoes.
6 tomatoes, okay.
Roma tomatoes. I've used some heirlooms that we just got from a local farmer's market, which are a little bit larger, so I have a few less. And then have a jalapeno.
Now, sometimes people ask me, why would you choose a Roma tomato, which are the long teardrop-shaped tomatoes, as opposed to the round tomatoes? And I usually tell them it's because aromas have more meat and less juice. And so, if you're making a gazpacho, it doesn't really matter, but if you're making a sauce, like a tomato sauce or a ketchup or something like that, it takes a lot longer to boil that extra juice out. And so you'll find a lot of recipes that end up with sauces that are usually on the thicker side will ask you for aromas, and the reason for that is because they have more meat and less juice. But still, it's a juicy tomato, no matter which way you go.
Yeah, and then what I like to do, and I'll just do one for demonstration purposes, but I like to get a little bit of the zest. It's got all the oils in the citrus fruit, and add that in.
And it really enhances the flavor also of the rest of the vegetables that are in there, because that citrus, it just adds a...
If you have a juice squeezer, I'd recommend that, but you can just, if not, you can just kind of go through and add your juice. I like to add some citrus juice. It gives it a nice kind of balance of flavor. Lemons, limes, oranges.
Nice.
It just gives it a really nice brightness that counterbalances the kind of the richness of the crab cake and the
Some
spice.
gazpacho recipes will call for a vinegar. So do you put vinegar in here, or you use
I do
your
not.
citrus
I think the citrus
instead?
kind of uses that.
All right.
And then, so now I'm going to take my bread.
Okay.
It's some kind of dried bread crust, and then you cut the crust off. You kind of put that in the olive oil. One of the things I've learned over time is you let your bread soak up the oil, and you put that in last. Because if you put it in too early, it kind of emulsifies into your gazpacho, and
Instead of just being an accent, it changes the color too,
yeah, it
doesn't
turns it kind of salmon pink, which
Gazpacho should be beautiful, rich red.
yeah. So I'm going to put the veggies in, and if you need to do 2 batches, you can do 2 batches. Add some tomato juice, kind of help with the blending process. It's always important to start your blender out on low and then increase your speed as you go along. I took this off, but you can put that in. And I have my hand over the cover, so if it shoots up. And then I'm going to push everything down so it blends. And so I've got my tomatoes mixed in. Next thing I'll do is add my olive oil and bread. And the bread helps thicken it, and the olive oil helps with a little bit of the richness. And then at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of pulse it until it does. Until the bread's incorporated. And once I have that, there's you'll notice I didn't take any of the peels off. So
right,
what
you
I'm
want
going
to
to do
strain
now
that. Okay.
is strain the gazpacho.
And then here's a bowl you can strain that into. Let me get this
Okay.
out of your way.
Sure. And would you be? Could you grab me a spoon, please?
What kind of spoon do you need, sir? Like one of these?
That would be perfect.
All right.
You can use a spoon. You can use the back of a ladle. You can use a spatula
Okay.
to kind of push the.
You want to work it through that
Yep,
sieve.
to work it through the sieve.
And so the sieve here, you choose, y'all. You want to get one that has kind of big holes. You don't want it to
Mm-hmm.
be really, really tiny.
No, because you want a lot of the body and the texture. If it was really tiny, you'd kind of take all the body
Exactly.
and the texture out.
And
And
so,
then I just kind of work it around in a either clockwise fashion and
you can
get
see it coming out. Yeah.
yeah. All right. So
good
that's the gazpacho.
Now we have to do avocado salsa, right?
Avocado salsa.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and fine dice my pepper and onion so that it's kind of in the background of the salsa and not kind of the main ingredient. And then this is another way you can kind of dice an onion if you prefer. One thing that I always tell young cooks when they first start out is always use a flat surface. Like it's much easier to cut on a flat surface than it would be on a round. Then I'm going to crush some garlic and kind of dice that up a little bit. And I always do the avocados last because they brown.
They do brown,
If you
don't
do
they?
them early, yeah.
Now, do you believe in that leaving the seed in there keeps them from getting brown? Have you ever tried that?
Yeah, I've tried it with limited success.
It's like half of one and
Yeah.
6 dozen.
The acid of the lime will help not turn it
Yes,
brown.
that helps the most.
So I add a little lime juice, and finally I get to my avocado. And usually I just cut right around the seed, and it opens up, and then you can take your knife, kind of pop it in the seed, turn it, and pull it out. And then what I do is I'll dice the avocado in the skin. Just be super careful, go very lightly. When I was in culinary school, I saw someone cut through the skin of an avocado when they were doing this, and that did not end well.
No. Yeah.
And so I've kind of made cross hatches. So that's my dice of avocado. And I'll go ahead, grab a spoon, scoop it out, season that with a little salt and pepper, and mix that around. All right, next up I have my mahi. I got it skin on. You kind of want to look for this nice pink color to it. And then what I'm going to do is the skin is on. And mahi is from the dolphin family, but it's not the mammal
It's
dolphin.
not flipper?
No, it's not the mammal dolphin. And it's got a little more oil to it, a little more kind of flavor to it, and that's why I like it with this dish. It kind of stands up to all the bold flavors. And then, so basically what I'm doing is I came underneath the fish, and I've got the skin held, and I'm moving the skin, not the knife. Okay, and then it's got a line coming right down, and what I do is I'll take it, cut out the bloodline.
Now tell them why you'll cut out that bloodline.
Well, A, there's some of the spine left and some of the bones, so it cuts that out. And B, the bloodline has a kind of overly fishy flavor to it.
I think sometimes it tastes bitter too,
Yeah.
doesn't it? And it doesn't look good when it's cooked either. It turns kind of brownish. And so, and you really want to enhance the flavor of this fish because you've just paid a nice pretty penny for this fish.
Yeah.
And so you really want it to be about the fish and not about,
And depending on the size of your mahi, if you want to do a 6-ounce portion, you'll see you kind of want everything to cook at the same speed. So a lot of times just for a nice piece of fish, I'll take it and I'll kind of slice it right here, but not
all the way
cut
through.
it in half, not all the way through. And then I'll just kind of fold it over onto itself. So you have a nicer kind of meatier
that'd
piece
be
of fish.
nice, yeah. That
And
looks
then
nice.
this would be another portion and another portion. We just did a basic blackening rub for it with some oregano, garlic, and different spices, and thyme. And then we're just going to swirl those around. All this recipe is in the cookbook. And
Okay. And certainly if they didn't want to make their own blackening spice, there's
Yeah, you
plenty
can
of
buy
commercial
it.
blackening
Yeah.
spices out there, right?
Yeah, and writing cookbooks is a lot more work than I
Yeah, right?
ever thought it could be.
Want me to heat up one of these saute pans for you?
Absolutely, but let's do it on a medium-high heat.
Medium high, okay.
Yeah, I don't, with the blackening spice, I don't like to do it on a super high heat. It is important to make sure that your pan is nice and hot. Otherwise, the fish will stick to it.
Right. So you've just got a little bit of oil,
I
cooking
got a
oil
little bit
in
of
the
oil. I
pan.
want to coat the bottom of the pan, and then you just kind of wait for it to shimmer. You can test it too. Hear that noise? As it sizzles, that means it's
Good to go.
good to go.
Yeah, if you're putting stuff in the pan, guys, you're not hearing anything, it's not hot yet.
And so I'll put this in as it's hot, and keep it on hot, especially if you're putting more than one piece of fish in, because what'll happen is your pan will cool down, and then
You won't get that nice
and your fish will
crust on it.
stick. And the other thing too is I like this pan has a little bit of a heavier gauge on it, so you don't lose all your heat the minute you put the fish in. And the other thing too is be patient. You know, one of the things I notice a lot of people are
They're trying to move it around.
they dig right in there,
Yeah.
and you just kind of want to let it do its thing for a little while. The other thing too you can do is you can put you can preheat your oven to 350, 400 if you have a thicker piece of fish. Get it nice and brown on one side and then turn it over and you can finish it in the oven. You can see it's starting, the fish is kind of moving around, none of it's stuck. A little bit of the spice is around burnt, you know, a little bit burnt.
That's part of the blackening process.
Yep, but the spice on the fish is still kind of, it'll get a little bit black, but it won't completely, and it just kind of gives it a little, gives the whole dish kind of that southwesterny.
It smells southwesterny in here now.
Yeah, a little bit of a kick. See how it got
Look at how pretty that
a
is.
little dark on one side. And that mahi is one of those fish where you kind of want to cook through.
So I was just going to ask you that. Is this one of those fish you would cook medium rare, or do you cook it all the way
No,
through?
this one you cook all the way through. It's kind of a tougher fish.
Okay.
It's a really fast-growing fish, so it's a sustainable fish, but it's a little bit tougher. And so as you cook it, that muscle fiber will break down. So you really want to cook it all the way through, but just all the way through. So you want it to be kind of, when you can break it open a little bit, and you kind of want it to be opaque or cook through. You don't want to see any pink, is what I'm
Right.
trying to say, but you want it still to be moist.
So do you have a rule of thumb, like how thick fish is as to how long it could cook, or does it really depend on the species of fish? And
I think, you know, a thinner piece like this, 3 to 5, and a thicker piece like this one right here that we folded over would be more 5 to 7.
well,
So
do you
what'll
want to start on a plate up then?
Absolutely.
We have all the
Let's do it.
components done, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So here's a bowl, and here's your crab cake. We've already cooked it off for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We're thinking ahead here.
Yeah. So now I'm going to take my gazpacho. I'm going to spoon it to the bottom of the bowl. I don't want to drown my crab cake, but I want to have a generous amount. And so now we'll add our crab cake. And you see it's kind of firm. I can push
Yes.
down on it. It's kind of firm.
Yes.
And it doesn't break apart immediately in the gazpacho. And then I will kind of add my piece of fish. And then I'll finish it with a little bit of the avocado salsa. There you have it.
Oh, that looks fantastic. Here we go. Look at this. Blackened mahi with a beautiful tomato gazpacho, crab cakes, and avocado salsa. If you want the recipe, you can email me. My email address is Pamela, Pamela, .roberts, ROBERTS, at cpcc.edu. Our recipes are also featured on our website at pbscharlotte.org, and we'll catch you next time on Charlotte Cooks. Thank you.
A production of PBS Charlotte.